So, like Tyler said, so like in like 8th grade, I was like, oh, I want to make money and whatever. So I'd go and buy candy bars, ride my pedal bike up to Walmart and get candy bars and then sell them to my friends. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to make a bunch of money doing that, right? But you can only make so much money on a candy bar. But then I was like, oh, I want to have more businesses. Kind of like lost sight of that. I'd sit in like my school classes or at church or whatever, and I'd like draw out like little plans for my life. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have this Jeep company and this archery company, because that's like my thing, right? Off-road, guns, hunting stuff. Then I got into high school, sports, all that stuff kind of took over. I joined the military, I went to Iraq, I came home, went to SUU, and I was like, oh, I still want to do a business, like a legit business, but I was like scared, right? Because like that's a big commitment. You got to like set up all this stuff with the state and the government, and they're going to tax you, and it's like this big daunting endeavor. But I started doing like mobile auto detailing, right? Like I'd clean boats and I'd go and like clean some cars and had a little clientele base. And I was still going to school, and I was like, oh, I really want to do this like full time. School's not like really my thing because there's homework and more homework. And I don't like math. And they make you take math. But I still was here. And I got to go back to Iraq, right there in the middle of it. And I was sitting there and I was like, man, I'm really going to do this. Like, I'm really going to start this business. Came up with a plan. Planned it wasn't what I really did. I mean, part of it was. But I was like, man, this is going to work so great. Have all these great ideas. Came home, went to SUU for another semester. Was like, man, I hate that I have to retake this stupid class where you have to type on the computer how to use the computer. Like, I already knew that, right? And so then I started working on this plan with my friend. Like, we talked, we're like, oh, we're going to do this off-road shop and this gun shop, and it's going to be awesome, and this huge empire, and it's a lot of work, and it costs a lot of money. Louder? Okay. I'm going to yell, guys. Okay. And it costs a lot of money. I was like, man, this is way more than I thought it would be to do that. And so we had this great plan, sat down. It was like, man, we're really going to do this. And talked to a lot of people. Talked to a lot of people with businesses, right? Like, that's who you got to really like ask about, like, hey, how do I do this? I did a ton of like reading books, ton of internet research. And this is like 2012, so the internet wasn't what it is today. It was only kind of there, right? But there wasn't like tons of like social media things. Like, that was kind of still newer. And where you see it like entrepreneurs on Instagram are like with Lambos, and it looks all like fancy, but it's all just fake setups, right? Probably a picture in Las Vegas on a rental car for most of the entrepreneurs on Instagram. It's a lot of work and it sucks, but it's awesome and it's rewarding. Not to deter you, because it's awesome. But so we laid this plan out and put together this like awesome business plan, right? I'm like, okay, we're gonna go get this started. We went to the bank with a very detailed business plan. It was like really lengthy. I had a bunch of numbers and graphs and like projections, and I had done my research, my market research, who my target market was. And I was like, this is perfect. Like, they're gonna give me $250,000 today. Like, I just know it. And that was not the case. I was like, it really sucked, right? Like, it's like, man, they were like, this is a really great business plan, really well thought out, really great, but we're not gonna help you because you're a student, you don't have a job, or you need to quit your job to commit. So I worked at the bank at the time, and I was going to SUU, so I quit going. I like mostly just dropped out. I finished like most of my classes. Don't advocate for that. Learn all that you can. Okay. I only had to like pay back one class, so I finished the rest of them. So mostly, that's why I say I mostly kind of didn't drop out, but kind of. And then I quit my job at the bank because They wanted to see that I was dedicated. Then they still were like, nope, you have no huge collateral, you're putting your money into it. And there I was, like a broke college kid, using my GI Bill to pay for my school, and that was it. So I didn't have $1 million lined up. And then I was like looking at the price of my retail inventory, and I'm like, man, this is a lot of money. And I was doing guns and hunting stuff, right? Because that was my hobby. Like, yeah, you make a business your hobby. It's like not work, but it's still work. And so I was like, man, this is awesome. We're going to do it. Bank's like, nope, we can't help you. They didn't even want to look into small business loans. We did a bunch of footwork for them. They're like, nope. And the words from the guy was, Cedar City, it's not a great area for guns and ATV stuff. Have you guys driven down Cedar City's Main Street? There's a lot of shops with guns. Sportsman's Warehouse thought it was a great idea about 4 years after I started my business to bring in a retail location. And there's tons of ATV dealerships. So I was like, you know what? I don't care. I don't need you. You're just a Debbie Downer. So I took all the money that I had and dumped it into this business. And that was a huge risk because I was like, man, I'm going to lose my truck and everything else if it doesn't pan out. So then I had to hustle, I had to work. And it was all about a network of people. I'm going to talk about networking a lot because I don't know if that's mentioned a lot. For me, your network of individuals that you talk to, that you know, that's really like where you can get your customer base from. And I utilize my network of individuals. So I was like, we're going to do this. Did it. I had a business partner at the time. And we dumped everything into it. And it really kind of took off. And that's when I stopped going to school and quit my job because I was like, wow, this is really awesome. So I bought a bunch of ammo, and this is back in 2012 and I don't know if you're anti-gun, sorry, we can talk about it later. But is like when the gun market went crazy, and so I was just buying like everything I could. I went to a gun show, I had spent like $7,000. It was like all I had right there, saved up, spent it all, went to a gun show, and almost quadrupled my money on one weekend. I was like, wow, I'm rich, right? But not really, because I had to just take that and reinvest it all. And I don't know, who's into like guns, hunting, reloading, stuff like that? So you know the brass, right? So brass was a hot item in 2012. I went out to the gun range and I picked up all of the brass one day. I spent like 13 hours out there, picked it all up, polished it, could sell it for a ton of money at the time. It took me all day, but I profited without any real investment besides my time. So sometimes you got to think outside the box like that, and it paid off. And so I came back and I was like, oh, this is awesome. Now we can expand to what we wanted to do. So next door to where I had my retail location, which was a small building, which worked perfect for what I was doing, right? I wasn't trying to be a Cabela's necessarily. I was trying to figure out what I was doing, I guess, because I had a plan, but I really was just like this 23-year-old kid who was like, I'm going to be rich. And it was a lot more than that. So I kind of had this smaller shop, and it looked all like a cool, cozy cabin with elk antler chandeliers and everything. It was awesome. Next door was an empty shop, and I was like, cool, now we can expand it. So now we get a shop base for working on small engines. That was what my business partner, he had gone to Wyotech and had specialized in mechanics. And so we went and we got that too, right? Paid our 2 months deposit on that building. There's a bunch more money gone, and we're like, okay, now this really has to work. We need to find customers who have broken stuff that we can fix. So, you know, we tapped into our friends and our family and got some snowmobiles in, and because this was winter now, it was January, and fixed those, and then continued fixing more people, and then they told somebody. Customer service was big. And pretty soon, like, got really busy, and was like, wow, this is a lot. Need to keep going. So I took every dollar that like we had made, it felt like. I didn't really pay myself that first year very much. And so, you know, here I was like, oh, I'm gonna be this like awesome CEO of this giant empire, and I was like still broke. And just keep dumping money into my business. And that first year was really awesome. We had made grossed a bunch of money, and everybody knows the difference between gross and net incomes. Who does not? We can talk about it right now. Okay, so we had grossed close to $1 million, which was a bunch of money for a little business, right? Nothing fancy, and I had zero debt. I didn't owe a dollar to the bank. I had no interest to pay back to anybody. But like on a personal level, I was like still broke, right? Because I had dumped all that money into my business. But the next year it grew. And I eventually I parted ways with my business partner that first year. And I kept doing this business. It was a lot of work and lots of stress. I like lived there. I'd spend the night there. It wasn't all like roses and sunshine like I had like thought it would be. And it was a lot of work, and it felt like I wasn't getting ahead the first year, except like when I would look at like the report on the dollar, right? But the big thing there was like you just have to make sure that you take care of people. Customer service, it goes a long ways on referrals. If you do somebody wrong, they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to post it on the internet now, and everything's on the internet now, like everything. So make sure, you know, you always are taking care of that person, that individual. I owned that business for 4.5 years, and in that time frame, I learned a lot of things that I would not do again, things that I should have done, things I shouldn't have spent money on. There's a ton of things. I had an awesome time. We shot a pilot episode for a reality show for TV that never wound up working out because it'd been the next Diesel Brothers, right? And had a lot of my stuff featured in magazines and was on a TV show. I learned a lot of things. I met a lot of people and made a huge network connection of individuals. And I guess I'll cover that in a second. I utilized my network, but then I sold it. And this is this part that Tyler likes, is this dude came in, he was another business owner from Cedar, and he had a very large company. And he came in, and I knew him, we were friends. We did a lot of off-roading together, and it hung out a lot. And he came in one day, and I was having a bad day, because every job has a bad day, school is a bad day. When you're a business owner, sometimes there's a lot of bad days. And I was having a really bad day, and nothing was going right. And he came in with this bag, and he's like, hey, Pat, I want to buy you out. And I was like, okay, like, perfect. I hate this place. And he's like, no, like, for real, like, I want to buy you out. Like, what's your price? I'm like, I don't know, make me an offer. And the year prior, another company had tried to buy me out, and we had gone back and forth for a long time. And part of their deal was they wanted me to work for them for like $40,000 a year. And I was like, that's crazy, like, no. So I had passed on the previous year's buyout offer from another well-known company. And this guy was like, yeah, I want to expand my portfolio of businesses and have a gun business. And he was from California. And so I was like, well, okay, make me an offer. And he picks up this duffel bag, and he's like, here's half up front. And it was just full of $100 bills. And inside was little bags with $5,000 per sealed bag. And he's like, I'll pay half up front and half in a month. And I was like, okay. Like, sounds good to me. It was less than the value of what the business was. I was having a bad day. I was done. I had been looking for an exit strategy. I was like, yep, let's write it up. We wrote it up on a napkin. And then eventually we got it really done and notarized and everything later that day. But he's like, you need to talk to your wife or anything? I was like, nope, I'm done. Like, I'm out. See you later. And well, I go home that night and I bring home this bag of cash. My wife's like, what is this? Are you dealing drugs? And I was like, I'd be a lot richer if I was. And anyway, so I like finished up my stuff. You know, he gave me like 6 weeks, I think it was, to close out all of my stuff and transition into him. Part of that deal was I had stayed to help transition, which is kind of pretty common with any buyout or sellout type thing. You'll probably be there to transition. And then I did a bunch of marketing and sales for him for his other company and my company for, it was like 8 more months. And I was like, awesome, like no stress, my life's awesome. It's not my problem anymore, right? And then I became a National Guard recruiter, which is still, really it's about customer service and sales at the end of the day for the military. But the big things through all of it, even with my current job, is honesty. And Eduardo here, he knows. Have I BS'd you at all? I hope not. No. So that's like the story of that business and how it went down, and it was awesome, and it's a cool story, kind of. It's not like a lot of these other people you'll have come in where like I have this huge empire still and they're like millionaires and stuff. I didn't get like millions of dollars for my business, but I came away ahead, right? I didn't like go bankrupt, and I didn't have to pay back a bank for anything. But one thing that like made it work initially, right, like I had done previously, is I had been afraid to like take that big leap, right? So like if you're like, oh, I want to do this, I had been scared to fully commit. And once I fully committed and took that risk with like all of my dollars, quitting my job, quitting going to school at the time, if you commit fully, and I'm not saying to quit going to school because you learn, right? The more education you have, the better. It can work out, but if you only half commit to doing something, anything in your life, like it could be sports, you will only get a half result, right? So if you're going to do a business and you're going to invest dollars and time and effort, my takeaway is commit and commit fully. And like if you're like, hey, I want to start one, you got to find a solution for a potential problem for a potential customer, right? So like me, I had like my solution for the problems was I was willing to work on my off-road repair stuff, the four-wheelers and things like that. I was willing to work on the older ranchers four-wheelers and the old snowmobiles and jet skis and all that other junk that was a pain to work on, because the dealerships all cared about the new side-by-sides and didn't want to work on people's garbage, or you know what they deemed was garbage. But you know, Honda makes a great four-wheeler. They're just a little dirty, but I was willing to work on it and fix it. With the off-road or the gun side, I found like that niche market and didn't try to be Cabela's, which Sportsman's Warehouse, anything like that. I found my niche market. I was like, okay, I'm going to specialize in custom guns specifically, or custom loads, things like that, like a specialty store, which can also hinder your income, like your return on investment. But if you have a niche market and you have a network of individuals, and for me at the time, I had been in the military, I was still in the Army National Guard, I had pretty much everybody I knew was like into guns, right, in the military, so they would all call me. From the active Army side, guys across the country, they would all be like, hey, can you send me a gun to Texas? And you can't just mail a gun in the mail. If you're anti-gun and you want to come fight me, like, you can't. Just can't do that. You got to ship it to a dealer. But I found that niche market. And then I started offering Cerakote coatings, which, I don't know, some of you may know what that is. If you don't, it's a ceramic coating, makes stuff look awesome, guns. I started offering it. I spent a ton of money invested on the equipment to do that, like sandblasters and paint booths and spray guns, things like that. And then I spent a bunch of money going to Oregon to get certified so that I was a certified applicator. There was no other applicator within hundreds of miles. So I would pick up business from Las Vegas and all the way even Salt Lake. The FBI even sent some guns to me to do. Because the internet, right? Market yourself on the internet. And I'll talk about that. But I found that niche market, and that's what I focused on. And it took me a few years, a couple years to really dial that niche market in. So like if you're going to start a business and you're like, well, I'm going to do this and this and this, really sit down and think about like what your niche market could be. Because me, I was all like scatterbrained. I was trying to tackle everything at once, and it was really overwhelming. And so eventually I got rid of the off-road stuff and the retail stuff and downsized my retail location and made it just a specialty like coatings shop. And I would still retail stuff, a lot of online sales. You can't just keep your same business model, I learned. It's going to change with the times. So in 2012, obviously the internet was around. I don't know, some of you guys were like 10 years old, probably. But the internet sales, like Amazon, right? Internet sales have really like, that's what everything is now. You see brick and mortar retail locations shutting down because the internet's really taken over. So the internet did the same thing to me, and so I had to, when you have a retail location, you have to pay to keep your lights on, right? So you have to have a profit margin that you make. Well, the internet really ruined it because just warehouses, basically they could just store a bunch of stuff like guns and accessories and sell it for super, super cheap. And they could blow my price out of the water because they could sell it for $7 more than I was making, or than it cost me. So then I was like, man, I have to figure out how to adapt to this circumstance. So I stopped buying like all of these fancy guns and everything and stocking them all. I would find the manufacturers and they would have like a great deal. They'd be like, buy 15 of these AR-15s and they'd be like $300 if you buy 15. I'm like, oh, that's a great price. And because they would retail for like $600. And then I would take them and I would Cerakote them, put the fancy coatings on. Females were really getting into the shooting sports at the time. So like that, I don't know if you've seen like the little Tiffany blue guns. Some of you may have seen those on the internet, I don't know. So I started doing them like that, and I could turn around and list them online on my website, and I would sell them for $1,200. And so it would be like a $300 investment with about $60 worth of labor and product. And I was making a huge profit margin because I had to adapt to that. I couldn't just sell a Glock pistol and hope to come away after my $65 profit on this sale, because you just won't get ahead. So that's where I really shifted my focus. I quit doing the off-road repair stuff. I started doing coatings on some stuff, like some engine components and stuff like that. And I picked up a lot of, trying to think of the word now, like other businesses would bring me their stuff to do. A lot of other gun companies out of Las Vegas, gun companies there. Gerber sent me some stuff to do one time. And so I would really just try to hit those customers because they pay big, right? Not everybody, like if you have a cookie company, like you're not going to be selling to, I don't know, like Glock or somebody, or what do you say?
Nestle.
Yeah. You know, they're not going to be your customer necessarily, but you just have to adapt. So I just adapted along the way, and really my business model shifted and it changed as it went through that. But let's see right here where I had it. And then I just continued to reevaluate my business model and make those changes as I had to as I went along. And it worked. I never was like a bazillionaire. I was always stressed. and I worked a lot. And that's really what it is. I hired employees. I had like 7 employees at one time. We were really busy, and still then I was still overwhelmed. I was like, I don't have good time management. So I learned a lot about time management in that time frame, like what's really important, what's not important. And so that's a big one. Even in my current job as a recruiter for the military, time management's huge because you can let your whole day get away from you. But so like you guys are all in here because you're like have thought about starting a business maybe, I don't know, or you're just like, oh, I'm here for an elective or whatever. But like me, I was scared of what it took to start a business and all the paperwork and all these things. But it's super easy. I'll tell you how to do it right now. You can write it down. It's like 3 steps. You need a federal EIN, which is an employer identification number. It's like a social security number for your business. You can Google that, and you can do it. I could do it right here on my phone and set up a whole business right now. And that's super easy. Make sure if you do it, you go to the .gov website, not like some other website that's going to sell your information to, I don't know, some criminal organization. And then you have to figure out what state you're going to have your business in. Utah is super easy. You just Google business entity, search, and you search a name. And so you search up your name and you're like, oh, I like this name. This is the business I want to be. If you're going to have like a bigger company with a DBA, which is like a doing business as, so maybe Nestle, right? But Nestle owns like 100 other companies. You just create it that way, and then you register it. It creates like an articles of incorporation, and then it's in the business. You have to pay, it's like $55 or whatever to Utah. And then if you're going to be a retail store and you're going to be retailing things, you need a tax ID or a tax exemption ID, I guess, so that you can buy stuff tax-free to turn around and sell. So you can't just like go buy like paper for no tax to use in your printer, but if you're going to resell that paper and you're a paper company, that's how that would work. It's super easy sounding because it really is. I've done it like 8 times. And that's really the steps. That's really like as simple as it is. And I thought it for the longest time. I was like, this is so difficult. There's a bunch of companies. If you go to Google and you type in create a business or set up my business or whatever, there's a bunch of other businesses out there who will charge you anywhere from like $500 to $2,000 to set up your business to do what I just told you to do, like how to do it. And they'll set up your business for you and you tell them what to do and they set it up. Or you can get a really good accountant and they'll set it up for you. That's a great way too. But it's really simple, a lot simpler than you may think in your head. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. That's really as simple as it is, isn't it?
That's it. Well, and even before then, I think the primary criterion is hustle.
Well, that of course. And then, like the other big one is your network of people, right? Put that on my little notes a bunch of times because I mentioned a bunch because it's super important. The bigger your network of individuals, the larger your pool of potential customers, the larger your pool of refers is, things like that. I took advantage of a bunch of SUU resources. When I was a student, they have, it's like the best business contest, or what's it called?
It's now called Opportunity Quest.
There you go. Take advantage of that. Put together your plan, present it. So I did that in 2012, and I think I got like second place, and it wasn't like $1 million. I think it was like $1,500 or something. And I put that towards my business. The next year I created a subsidiary company called Outlaw Lighting and came in with a new idea under my umbrella of business. And I think I won that year, and it was like $3,500 or $3,000, I don't remember. But I took that idea, and side-by-sides were big, but street legal kits weren't like run-of-the-mill on them at the time. And I bought a bunch of electrical wire and connectors and switches and all that with that money that I won in that contest. And then I used my network of individuals to prototype their side-by-sides because I didn't own a Polaris Razor and a Can-Am, and all of these other side-by-sides, I would just have friends that would buy them, and I'd be like, hey, I'll give you one at cost if you let me fit this to your machine. And then I would package it up and wrote up some fancy little instructions with pictures, and then I'd sell them on the internet. And that contest was awesome. I definitely suggest taking advantage of any opportunity you have through SUU. They still have like the Business Resource Center over here. So I used to go over there and talk to those guys a lot because they could provide some good insight and whatnot. So real quick, so marketing is huge, and you can do it on a budget, because I didn't spend $1 million on marketing. Your network of people and customer service are your two biggest, right? Talk to everybody about what you do. Like, oh, I sell cookies. Everybody loves cookies. I even like cookies. And I'd buy a cookie if somebody had cookies in here right now, because I'm hungry. But radio, people think, oh, the radio doesn't work. We got XM, Sirius, and Spotify, and all these other things. Find your niche market, advertise on that station. For me, I advertised on the 590 KSUB, the talk radio in the morning, because my clientele with the old four-wheelers and who had money for gun stuff was the people that listened to that station. I would do a live call twice a week for a minute and a half, talk to the guy on the radio, and then I would do radio ads on like the country music stations and stuff like that, because that was my target demographic. That's who mostly listened to that. Social media is free. It took me a minute to really jump on the Instagram train when it came out, because I was like, that's just for food and girls taking pictures of food and vacations. It was huge. The algorithms changed a bunch of times. I use it for all my other stuff now. It's free. It has a big reach. Learn and understand how to use social media. Marketing, it's free, and it can have a great return. That's where a lot of my business came from the internet. Was not just Google searches, but from Instagram on like the custom gun stuff. And then a great way, if you have like a service, I would donate. So like for me, I would donate to like the Sportsmen's for Fish and Wildlife, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, stuff like that. A large gift card, so like $150 value or whatever, and it would cost, like that would cover somebody to get a gun coated in a single color. But everybody would want to do more. They'd be like, oh, well, I want to do a fancy thing. I already got $150 off. So you can basically upcharge. I wasn't really out anything because I'm already going to have to coat it anyway, but it allowed me to upcharge, basically. So that person's still using their $150 gift card, but they're still going to spend $150 because they're like, well, I want to buy this, and I want to add this to it. So I'd still come away ahead. It was free marketing because I was like a sponsor of an event, or it would be noted there. So that's a great way, and donate to your target market if they come to ask about donations for things. Like for me, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Sportsmen's for Fish and Wildlife. And then I just, for time's sake, just a couple key things, major takeaways I learned. I made some bullet points. Your network of people is key to success in hustling. Don't hire just friends, they'll take advantage of you. I learned that the hard way. Going into a partnership with a very close friend is not always advisable, and remember your business partner's spouse will be a partner as well. Be cautious who you let into your business circle. Not everybody has the best intentions for you. The friends that ask you for special deals or at cost or below are not your friends. Credit card charges eat your margins, so plan accordingly. Like they'll charge 3 to 5%. American Express. I use American Express everywhere I go, but I know I'm burning those people out of 5%. 35 to 40% if you're doing retail is an ideal margin. If you can't keep that, try to figure out a way to make that work. So like me, I would buy the guns at $300, coat them, then resell them for $1,000, and my margin was way better than 30%. Get a good accountant. You can't do it by yourself. Don't try. Well, I mean, you could try, I guess, if that's like your thing, but that's not my thing. Keep your paperwork organized. Take advantage of all your tax breaks. So I had clients, we would go hunt in Africa, I'd create a bunch of marketing material, and it would be a tax write-off for me. Employees can make or break you. If you got a bad employee, cut them. Don't just keep them because they're your friend. Don't burn yourself out. Enjoy what you do. Let work be a hobby, but don't let it ruin your hobby. I let it ruin my hobby, like going to the range. I sold it in 2016 and it's 2022. And I still don't like going to the range to recreationally shoot guns. It's not my favorite hobby anymore because I burned myself out. Customer service is key for getting good referrals, or getting referrals and repeat customers. And then don't take advice on how to run your business from someone who is trying to tell you to work an 8 to 5 and build somebody else's dream. If they've never owned a business or have no experience in that world. Because I had a lot of people try to tell me, family members, oh, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. It's not stable, it's unsafe. But do what you want to do. Just make sure you're committed and you have a plan. Any questions? Yes?
So what business are you in right now? I mean, you said that you're in the National Guard, but is there
Oh, so I have a stuff in physical fitness, the hunting industry. We've got outfitter stuff, and then I book hunts for people too. On top of that, around the world, like a booking agent, I guess, and sales. And then this year, I'm trying to do another one. It's a huge investment, dollar-wise, because it doesn't exist anywhere in this area, in the construction industry. But I don't want to share that one yet because I don't have it going yet. I don't want somebody else with more money than me to go and be like, I'm going to do this today.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could talk more about your market strategy before you opened your business. So I know you said your networking and stuff like that. Was it a lot of before opening the business? Was it a lot of word of mouth, or how were you advertising yourself before?
Yeah, so we basically built a brand. We made some apparel, and then we talked to a lot of our friends, and then because I talked to you before, you're military, right?
Yeah,
Marines, right? So you know how your friends probably all have they're into guns, right? Be like, hey, I'm doing this cool gun shop. Oh, I want to buy a gun, or I need some ammo or whatever. And so then they would tell their friends, and it would just kind of go from there. I did a bunch of also market research. This industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. How much money do people spend at the time on this and this and this? And that's where I'm going to focus a lot of my efforts.
Okay. So just building brand recognition.
Yes.
And then networking, word of mouth.
And sometimes you got to give away a bunch of apparel. You got to invest a bunch of money on some hats and give them to people. And then they wear them and they're like I'd see them. I still see hats from that, and from 2012. The other day at Smith's, a kid was wearing one. I was like, I know that hat.
How important was the startup location?
I think it's super important. I didn't have a bunch of money behind me, so it wasn't an ideal location. So I had to build a lot of search engine optimization right on the internet, and I used the radio, social media, Facebook, and then you build those things, and then you talk to everybody. Be like, hey, I got a gun store. You like guns? Does your cousin like guns? Oh, you got a four-wheeler? Is it broken? I know a guy that can fix it. And they bring it to you. And then eventually it just starts going. It still was never an ideal location, but I wanted to build a fancy big building with a test driving course and be like a Can-Am and Kawasaki dealer, and they require millions of dollars in hard cash up front to even do that. So I was like, well, that dream's gone today. So.
Assuming you can figure out the process to start a business and everything by yourself without the help of an accountant or some third party, how much would that cost today, do you think?
Registering your EIN's free. And in Utah, I think it's $55 to register a business entity. I suggest talking with an accountant, not just going all out. That way you can start getting all your stuff set up for your tax write-offs and things like that. But you could do it for 55. I think it's $55. The guy that bought it sold his company and it, because he retired, and so they sold it again because the two people that bought it like had a fight, and now it's sold again. I don't know. I haven't been in there for like a lot of years. I think they moved because it got acquired by another company, and so, but I don't think the third owners, I don't think hustled as hard. Like I lived there. I had a couch. I slept on it there like every night, I felt like.
I've got one time for one more question.
When you start doing marketing on radio, social media things, how long did it take until you start to see success and return on that? And if it took a while, how did you kind of invest in that?
So like a regular, like the regular radio station, they say it takes like 10 times or whatever. That one I don't know as much because I also combined it with like the Tradio talk radio in the morning where I would do a live call. And so when I first started doing that, I got like instant phone calls. And at the time, 22 ammo was really hard to come by. So I would spend a ton of money and buy like cases and cases of 22 ammo. And I'd be like, oh, we have 22 ammo in stock. And I'd have like 400 people show up because you couldn't find it anywhere. And so it's hard to say how the other thing did comparison because the live calls were always the best. Or reloading powder, I'd be like, oh, we got this in, and people who wanted it and couldn't find it would show up or call and be like, oh, I would like some. So niche market, find your niche market, and that was a good one for me. It won't work for everybody to do a live radio call like that.
Thank you so much for being here, Patrick.